Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head over to Finland once again, and that of course means that we're going to have a look at yet another beer from Riku box number 1. So massive shout out and thank you of course to one of my subscribers, Riku Sanaksanaho. He is officially my Finnish beer mule, and thanks to him you will be seeing a steady stream of Finnish beer reviews on the channel over the coming weeks, months and years. We are going to try and do 2 Finnish beer boxes a year. He's already gathering stuff for the second box at the moment, but I still have quite a few beers to try from the first one, and we're going to move on to the big boys today. We're moving on to the slightly higher alcohol ones, so yeah, hopefully these reviews will be as good as the other ones have been. So for this review then, we are going to have a look at another brewery who I've never tried anything from before. We're going to go down to Helsinki for this one and have a look at my first beer from Stadin Panimo. So this particular beer is called the American Barley Wine. It comes in at 8% ABV, and that makes it one of the lower alcohol barley wines that I've come across before. I don't think I've ever actually had an American style barley wine that's been this low in alcohol. The only ones I can think of that might have been would be the more kind of traditional English ones. So yeah, this should make for a really interesting review. The main difference between the American and the English barley wines in my experience was that the American ones were slightly sweeter and more kind of juicy and fruity, whereas the English ones were a little bit more kind of how would you say, the English ones were a little bit more kind of roasty and toasty, and the fruit was a little bit more kind of medicinal, phenolic kind of thing. So yeah, this one I think should be a really interesting one for us to review. Curious to see what a slightly lower alcohol American style barley wine is like. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy my take on this one, and hopefully it's an interesting review as well. So as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from, or that I will do, from Stadin Panimo. This is the very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned. There's all the usual social media down there as well. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Finnish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to very regularly now, thanks to Riku. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Stadin Panimo then, on to my brewery notes. So Stadin Panimo, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Helsinki. They are in the Suvilahti area, which is kind of to the northeast of the main central part when I looked at the map, and the company was originally founded back in 1998. So the original founders of the brewery were Kari Likovori, who was a home brewer and beer export. There was Ari Jermela as well, who was also a home brewer, big beer enthusiast. Ilkka Sisila, who had a training, he basically had a training company for bartenders and things like that, from what I understand. There was Timo Kontinen, who was an entrepreneur, and then there was Juha Paronen as well, who apparently was, you know, quite prominent in the finance industry and things like that. But their first location that they had was in the old fish market hall in Kalasatama. The first beers were released in 1999, and these were the Stadin Kundi and also the Stadin Fridu as well, both of which were satis, and this meant that Stadin Panimo was the first commercial sati producer in the city of Helsinki. So the following year they began to produce other styles of beer as well, but in the early days they were only producing draft beer, and they reached a capacity, or an output if you like, of around 30,000 litres per year. Later on in 2007 though, Stadin Panimo went out of business due to them being unprofitable. Timo Kontinen, who was the CEO and one of the original founders, of course, as we mentioned earlier, he invested €100,000 in the year 2008 to restart the business, and they also bought new equipment which allowed them to actually brew lagers for the first time too. So they got a new bottling line, I think a new brew kit, and you know, new fermenters and things like this too. And the first bottles from this new kind of a reincarnation, I guess you could say, of Stadin Panimo were released in 2009. And yeah, from what I understand, the whole kind of split there with the company wasn't completely acrimonious. So yeah, I'm not going to go too much into that. I didn't really research too much into that, in fairness. But yeah, this was, the company was kind of resurrected by one of the original founders. Over the coming years, they continued to expand a little bit, and then later in 2013 they moved to Suvilahti, and in 2015 they opened up a pub and restaurant restaurant right next to the brewery. In 2015 though, there was a bit of trouble for the brewery as well with the tax administration. So what happens, and Riku kind of was very kind and wrote all this out for me. So in Finland, apparently, the small breweries receive tax cuts. So if a brewery's production is under 500,000 litres, they get the maximum tax cut, which is 50%. So Stadin Panimo apparently rented equipment from a macro brewery called Olvi to produce 250,000 half-litre cans, which were distributed throughout the whole country. And even though they used their own ingredients and employees and and things like this, the tax administration stopped them getting this tax cut for the year 2015, and because they said that from this point Stadin were no longer an independent craft brewery, and apparently they ordered them to pay 250,000 euros in tax, and this was obviously a major kind of blow for them, but it was just I think it was just a kind of grey area, if you like, that hadn't been encountered before. But thankfully the company managed to survive. This was more than the profit that they'd done for the previous year, but they did manage to get through that, and they've been able to continue, and these days they're producing around 100,000 litres of beer per year. In 2020 they also bought the Suominen Panimo, which had gone bankrupt, so the beers will continue to be produced at the original Suominen Panimo brewery. You will see me review another one of their beers before. I reviewed the Pienpanimo-olut from them before, which was I think that might have actually been some kind of sati, if I remember right. It was a kind of smoked beer, but I will be reviewing another one from these guys a little bit later on. So yeah, Stadin Panimo now own the Suominen Panimo. And as of August 2020, Stadin Panimo have produced around 600 different kinds of beer. So yeah, that is pretty impressive actually. The artwork and things that these guys have used changed between the two different, I guess, I don't know whether it's right to say the two different companies, if you like, that this beer brand have operated under. But yeah, 600 beers in I think, what is it, about 13 years is not something to be sniffed at. That's a pretty damn impressive output actually. It's about at least 50 different beers per year. So yeah, they've got an impressive list of different bottled beers there. You can check that out on the brewery website. The Untappd list is pretty extensive as well. So yeah, that's pretty damn cool actually. So yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Stadin Panimo for the moment. Thank you again to Riku for helping me find the information on this. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult to find information on the Finnish breweries just because the language is so complex and things, but yeah, that was pretty cool. So yeah, if you want to learn more about this brewery, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages as well. And do check out the my review of the Suominen Panimo, the Pienpanimo as well. And like I say, you will see their Bock beer reviewed at some point fairly soon too. So yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork of this beer before we open it up. There you can see a kind of nice sort of grain, kind of grain plant there, barley plant, which looks very cool, nice and kind of modern graphic, I have to say. But you can see there's the eagle. Is that an eagle on the back? You can see the eagle, kind of hand-drawn style eagle on the back. Pretty cool label, I have to say. But yeah, they've also got this kind of little drawing here on the back as well. You can see plain gold bottle cap on this one. It does have a little bit of stuff in Finnish on the side there, which I'm not going to attempt to read. If there was Swedish there, as there is with quite a few of the breweries in Finland, I could have actually read it and translated it for you, but yeah, I think it's just telling you a little bit about the beer itself actually. But the only word that I can make out is caramel maltiainen. So yeah, the rest of it really have no idea about it. I think I've said this in other reviews as well. Finnish, it's a beautiful sounding language actually. When you listen to people speaking it, it sounds very, very nice. But I think when they were deciding how to spell words and things, I think it was just a bit of a contest on how many vowels you could actually fit into a word. So yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. As I said earlier, an 8% American style barley wine, this one. So let's get it into the glass and see how we get on. So yeah, I need to have a look and see what other beers these guys had, but this is just one. When we did the first box, when Rico and I were doing that, we just tried to kind of mix it up with different styles, and there are, I think I got another 2 barley wines on top of this one, but this is my first barley wine that I'm ever tasting from Finland, so yeah, hopefully it's a good one. But yeah, as you can see with this one, it's poured a lovely kind of, how would we describe that? It's actually a very nice kind of reddish mahogany colour, to be honest with you. There's a solid quarter finger of a frothy kind of creamy beigey foam on this one. That's fading away to be a very thin foamy layer, and you've just got a nice kind of ring around the outside of it. There's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass there. There's a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head, but otherwise it looks pretty damn nice actually. It's one of the brighter coloured barley wines that I've come across. It does have a degree of haze to it, but yeah, lovely kind of dark coppery, kind of almost chestnutty colour in fairness actually, this one. I think, yeah, coppery chestnutty is probably a good way to describe this one. Maybe even mahogany to a degree. A sort of light mahogany would would be a suitable description for this one. But yeah, one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there. The beer does have a degree of haze to it, but it's a kind of West Coast level haze rather than a New England level haze. But yeah, nothing overly surprising about the beer in terms of its appearance when you consider the style, but definitely a little bit lighter than in colour than some of the other barley wines that I've come across. So yeah, let's have a little look at the aroma of this one then and see how we get on. It does actually smell pretty nice. So yeah, straight away with this one, you can smell the lovely big malty backbone to it. So it's got quite a, I think this one actually has quite a bready base to it in fairness. There's a good bit of brown bread just forming the backbone of the beer. Yeah, the aroma of this one, I think, is yeah, the aroma here is pretty solid. It does have an element of Englishness to it in fairness. It's got that big kind of brown bready base. The brown sugars come out of this one really nicely. The thing with a barley wine is barley wines always have a very long boil. That explains kind of the colour behind them as well. The longer you boil the wort basically, the more the sugars caramelise, the beer becomes a bit darker as a result of that. So yeah, barley wines I think have boils between like 4 and 6 hours and things. So usually, yeah, they are kind of pretty, you know, they take a long time to brew these actually. I think if you brew a barley wine, you're not brewing any other beer that day. But yeah, the aroma of this one is pretty nice. It is actually quite balanced between the English side of things and the American side in my mind. It's got a bit of the brighter American sweetness. It's got, you know, there are elements of sweet caramel in there, and the kind of more McVitie's digestive biscuit notes. You've got a wee bit of a nutty character and some woody undertones as well. But it does have quite a bit of breadiness to it in my mind, and it does have some of the more kind of roasty, toasty brown sugars coming out of it too, which is quite interesting. So yeah, there is an element of brown bread to this one, a bit of a woody backbone to it as well. And yeah, I do have to say I like how that how all of that goes together. But it does have a wee bit of an, almost on the fruity side of things, it does have a little bit of that kind of phenolic element to it, which is what you would expect of an American barley wine. Sorry, an English barley wine, not an American one. The American ones are usually very juicy and bright in the fruits. The English ones tend to be a bit more kind of phenolic and sort of cough syrupy, medicinal kind of thing. And this one does have more of an English type fruitiness to it. On the hoppy side of things, there is a touch of earthiness coming out of this one. I'd be curious to know what hops they would have used in this, because there is something from the fruits here that's telling me it might be a little bit of Bramling's Cross that's in here. Because it does have, the earthiness does have a little bit of prominence, and it's almost a bit like a slightly darker English earthiness. That could be something from the yeast, right enough, that's giving it just a wee touch of the earthiness. But yeah, definitely interesting to think about. So yeah, good little bit of earthiness in there. You do get some of the floral notes sitting in it as well, a little bit of lighter grassiness. The other thing to remember is that this beer probably has been sitting in one of the alcohol warehouses for a little while, and you know, as the beer gets older and older, some of the hoppy characteristics will drop away. So some of the earthiness could just be from the fact that the hops that would have been naturally quite high in the beer have just dropped off actually. So that's another thing to consider with this one. But yeah, on the fruity side of things, it's kind of interesting. So yeah, there's definitely a little bit of a kind of pruny character to this one. There's a little bit of a kind of figgy, raisiny note. It's got a wee touch of a raisiny sharpness to it. But yeah, it's kind of pruny. There's a bit of datey note to it. There's a bit of kind of sultana in it also. But then the further you go towards more of the front of the nose, you do get a few of the kind of blackcurranty, blackberry notes out of it. It may be that there's a bit of Northern Brewer from Germany in here, But there's quite a few hops from America that you can use in beers like this. You know, Willamette, Magnum is quite popular in these kind of beers as well. Eureka is another one that sometimes you'll find. But then, of course, in Europe you have the Northern Brewer from Germany is popular in the Doppelbock, and in England you've got Bramling's Cross. So it could be any one of these. I'm not sure exactly what hop would have been used in this one. I think there might be. There's something that tells me it might be a mixture of Bramling's Cross because of the earthiness, but it could just be one of the American ones that's in as well. I would doubt that they would use Northern Brewer, but it is possible. So yeah, some lovely kind of pruny, datey kind of aromas coming out of this one. You've got some juicier figs in there as well, a little bit of a sultana type note, but then you do have the kind of blackcurranty, blackberry-ish type aromas coming out of this beer as well. So yeah, take a little bit of time to enjoy the aroma of this one before you get stuck into it. I think this one does have elements of both the English and the American barley wine, but definitely one of the more kind of bready barley wines that I've come across. So yeah, let's have a taste of this one then and see how we get on. This one is the American barley wine coming in at 8% ABV from Stadin Panimo in Helsinki, capital in Finland. Once again, a massive thank you to Riku for this one. Let's get stuck in. Slanje, skål, kipis. Yeah, it's quite interesting. It actually has a kind of toasty element to it, which is really, which just isn't what I expected. So yeah, this one is pretty nice actually. I like how it goes together. I mean, it does have quite a big kind of, it does have a good little bit of a bready. I find this one does have a little bit of a kind of bready element to it. But yeah, it is pretty solid. But I would say this one definitely one of the more kind of bready barley wines that I've come across for sure. And it's got a little bit of yeah, I wasn't expecting the kind of toastiness to this one. So yeah, interesting one to try, I have to say. So let's just try and break the flavour of this down a little bit then. So straight away across the middle of the palate you feel that kind of bready base there, which, and it's quite unusual to say that for a barley wine. But yeah, you do get a bit of that kind of bready base there. The further you go into the aftertaste, it does get a little bit more kind of grainy. It's almost as if you have like a kind of slightly toasty bread crusty quality just forming the backbone of the beer. When you go towards the back third of your tongue, there is a good little bit of bready thickness to it. You can feel that just kind of gradually building up in terms of thickness as you go further into the flavour of the beer. But yeah, you do get a few more of the kind of toasty grains out of it there. As you move into the kind of middle third of your tongue, you can feel the mouthfeel just sort of lightens up a little bit. You've got a bit of a kind of almost brown bready character there. In the centre of the palate you do have a good bit of a kind of sweet caramelly note to the beer, but it does have an element of that kind of treacly molasses kind of thing to it. But I really find this beer really does lean more towards the kind of bready, toasty side of things. It is more, I've never had a barley wine that's quite as bready as this, I have to say. But yeah, you do get an element of kind of brown sugars there, the sweet caramel in the centre of the palate. It does have a wee bit of that treacly molasses sort of thing, but there's a toasty element to it as well, which is quite interesting. But yeah, underneath that you do get the kind of toasty, bread crusty, grainy type qualities out of the beer, which is quite interesting. If you go to the front corners of your palate, then just move diagonally back, you do get a few kind of woody elements to the beer. And if you go to the centre of your palate and move forward, it does have one or two little kind of nutty things going on as well. But those, you know, those kind of subtleties are a little bit minimal, but you will notice them more the further that you go into the aftertaste. On the hoppy side of things then, in the back corners of the palate, there's a good little bit of earthiness there. It does have a little bit of strength to it, in fairness. So again, I wonder if there's maybe an English hop in this. But yeah, as you move further forward on the side of the palate, you do get a wee touch of herbal quality in there, but you can detect a little bit of a kind of floral aromaticity on the front corners of the palate as well. And then around the very front curve of the tongue, it's just a little bit lighter and more grassy. But behind the front curve of the tongue, that's where you get the kind of oily bubble, where the juicy, fruity esters start to push their way out of the beer. And yeah, this one does have some nice kind of fruity elements to it as well. If you go towards the back of that front third of your palate, it does have more of a kind of, there is a wee, between the kind of middle, the sort of middle third of your tongue and the front third of your tongue, there's a wee bit of a kind of toasty, it's almost like a really kind of toasted cake edge sort of thing. There is a wee bit of that roasty element to this beer. It does get a little bit drier the further you go into the aftertaste with this one, like I said, but yeah, there's a good little bit of a kind of roasty, toasty, there's a good little bit of a slightly roasty, toasty edge between the kind of malty side of the beer and the fruity side of it, but then just in front of that you start to get, there's a little bit of a kind of plummy note out of it. It has got a bit of that kind of sharper, kind of plummy, raisiny note, but yeah, as you move further forward on that front third of your tongue, you start to get a kind of datey, pruny kind of note, some sultanas sitting there underneath. Then on the front part of the palate, you'll notice that the further you go into the aftertaste, it gets a little bit of a black curranty, blackberry sort of thing coming out of it, and that's it's quite nice how that goes together. I mean, this, as I say, overall it's one of the more toasty barley wines that I've come across, and it's also one of the more kind of bread crusty ones that I've seen as well. So yeah, take a little bit of time and just you know, just enjoy that part of it. It is a little bit quirky, this beer. I would, to be honest, I would be tempted to say that it does lean a little bit more towards the English side of things. If it's an American barley wine, you expect it to be a little bit more more kind of sweet and things like that. But you know, it's a nice enough beer, this one. It's a nice kind of sipper to have. At 8% alcohol as well. You know, it is one of the lower alcohol barley wines you're going to come across, but it's a fairly, you know, it's a fairly kind of solid. This is quite a nice introduction, I guess, to the barley wine style. This one, it is a little bit, it comes across as a little bit old school, I think, and it definitely has a bit of the English character, but then some of the fruity notes and stuff that you get out of this one, and to a degree a little bit of the sweetness you get is kind of American. I think the fruity side of this beer is a little bit American, and some of the malty side of it's a little bit American as well, but otherwise I think quite a bit of the malty side is English, in fairness, and I think some of the hoppy elements are a bit English as well. So yeah, bear that in mind when you try this beer. But yeah, it's quite nice in that sense. But in fairness, I think it is nice when the barley wine was originally an English style. It is nice that it does have an element of Englishness about it. Actually, some of the kind of more roasty, toasty, malty elements and stuff. So yeah, interesting one. This has been an interesting one to taste, actually. But yeah, the further you go into the aftertaste with this one, you'll get more of a woodiness out of it. You'll start to get a bit more graininess, and you also get some nice juicy, fruity notes, like I said. So yeah, on the kind of mouthfeel of this one, then it's kind of top end of mid-bodied, bottom end of full-bodied. This beer, the carbonation is very smooth in this one. It's got a good kind of wetness to the mouthfeel. It's not the most oily barley wine I've come across, in fairness, but on the hoppy bitterness side of things, I think this one you're maybe going to get, you know, you're going to get about 30ish IBUs, something like that out of it. The earthiness does give you a little bit of bitterness there, but otherwise it's fairly kind of smooth. The malt base, like I said, has a bit of a kind of smooth breadiness to it, a little touch of sweetness in there as well, but a bit of a toasty character, some nice juicy fruitiness, and yeah, it's one of these ones, it's just solid how everything kind of goes together. So as I said, to sum this one up, barley wine has a good bit of English character to it, nice little bit of fruity juiciness in there as well, and yes, it's got a little bit of the old English barley wine character to it, but it does have some American kind of malty notes and fruitiness to it as well. So yeah, you know, thumbs up to Stadin Panimo for this one. This would be a nice introduction, I think, to the barley wine style, and definitely one of the more bready barley wines, I think, that I've come across too. So yeah, I need to have a look and see what other beers these guys have, and see what they're like. But yeah, I need to review another beer from Vaka Suominen in Panimo as well. I do have another one of those sitting in the fridge. But yeah, this was an interesting introduction to my Finnish barley wines. I wanted to see what else. I think I might have told you lies, actually. I did have a barley wine from Sonisari. We had the Nelson Sauvin barley wine from Sonisari up in Oulu. Just realised that. So yeah, this is my second barley wine from Finland. I told you lies throughout this video. So yeah, cool to have something a little bit more traditional, if you like, in terms of barley wine. But yeah, interesting run to review this. So yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed my take on this beer. Something a little bit different, I think, compared to the other Finnish beers that we've had so far. But yeah, thank you again for watching my reviews. As always, let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Stadin Panimo as well. We will see what else these guys have. Maybe I'll review another one from these guys fairly soon. We probably will try another Stadin beer at some point in the future. But yeah, cool to introduce this brewery to you here on the channel. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. Let's leave it at that. So thank you again for watching my reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Stadin Panimo as well. Do let me know some other Helsinki breweries that I should check out, and you will see some more Finnish beer reviews over the next little while. We've got quite a few nice stouts. I think there's another 1 or 2 barley wines in there. So yeah, I hope you enjoy the kind of conclusion, if you like, of Riku box number 1. So yeah, this was the next one in the list. Thank you again for watching my reviews, and I will catch you guys later. This one was the American barley wine, coming in at 8% ABV from Stadin Panimo in Helsinki in southern Finland. Slange, skål, keep us. Thank you again to Riku.